Well, hey guys, welcome to today's video. I want to do things a little bit different today. It's not really a how-to video, but I want to share with you several reasons, 6 reasons in fact, why your nursery will fail. 6 things that you got to be aware of, 6 things that you've got to be able to overcome in order for your new startup nursery to be a success and to be all that you dreamed it would eventually become. If you're watching this channel, chances are you're interested in something to do with plants or a nursery or growing your own things in some way or another. And I want to share with you today several reasons why that may be destined to fail from the beginning. The first reason that your nursery is going to fail, and you got to hear this. This is coming out of my own heart. It's coming out of my own experience, and it's coming out of my having a fairly good understanding of human nature. The first reason that your nursery is going to fail is because you underestimate yourself. Now, you watch my videos, you see other videos, you go visit local nurseries around you, you have an idea of what a nursery is, and you think to yourself, I've never worked in a nursery, I don't have any experience dealing with irrigation, building greenhouses, growing plants. There's no way that I could ever actually do any of this stuff. And the reality is that figuring out a lot of this stuff, it is challenging and it is difficult, and nobody just learns how to do all of this stuff overnight. But I want to just make sure that this is not the biggest stumbling block for you. One of the things about starting your own business of any kind, but particularly a nursery, is that you have to be willing to try things that you don't know how to do. I mean, just try. So let's say, for example, well, I've never tried to go through the process before of getting my licensing and certification and doing the legal stuff in getting a nursery started. Well, what you have to do is take the first step. So then taking the first steps to figuring out something like that is you need to get online, you need to go to your state Department of Agriculture site, start looking around, figure out what you have to do, and then do it. Or you think to yourself, I've never tried to sell anything in my life. How would I actually be able to sell these plants? I might can grow the plants, but how am I actually going to sell them and be able to actually get money into my hands? If you're going to do anything in your life, whether it's start a nursery, start any business, do something that's really beyond what you've ordinarily done, you have got to have some determination about yourself in order to do it. And maybe you've never done anything like that before. Maybe you've never really tried to do anything that's hard. Listen, anything that's worthwhile is going to be hard. And if you want to do something great, then you have to make the sacrifices that are required in order to do it. You're going to have to try things that you've never done before. You're going to have to push yourself. You're going to have to learn new things, but it starts with you being willing to try. So if you have a big dream and you have a big ambition to start a business, a nursery business, any business, what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you really willing to dive into and try like you've never tried before? I can guarantee you, and I literally mean I can guarantee you, that you are capable of way more than you think you are. Just because you've never done it doesn't mean that you can't do it. And the first thing that you need to do is just recognize that you can. The second reason that your nursery is going to fail is because you have no plan. You don't have to have the perfect plan. You don't have to have every single step of the plan mapped out ahead of time, but you better have a plan and not just start doing stuff. So, for example, the first things that you need to figure out when you're starting a nursery business is where are you going to get your plants and what are you going to do with them? Just start with those things in mind. Then how are you going to grow them and how are you going to protect them if necessary over winter? You got to start thinking through your plan. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and figuring out how you're going to do this. An example of what can happen when you fail to plan is something as simple as this. And listen, I'm sharing this with you because I've been there. You buy in 1,000 plant starts. You're really excited about it. You can't wait to get them. You start potting them and you realize, I don't even have enough pots and I can't deal with this and I can't just go out and get a bunch of pots today. Well, what are you going to do with all of these baby plants? You can't pot them up and you don't have anywhere to put them. Have you thought through what you're doing? Write it down on paper. Think through a process a little bit and make sure that it is coherent and that it makes sense. You have to have a plan and then you have to work the plan. A third reason why your nursery is going to fail is because your vision is way too big. And here's what I mean when I say that. You're dreaming, you're thinking about how in the world could I ever build a nursery of my own and Things that come to your mind are semi-trailers full of materials and migrant workers and employees and 50 acres of land and millions of dollars in product and materials, and that can be a huge problem. While it's always good to have a long-term picture far into the future of what you ultimately want it to look like, you've got to be realistic about how you start. And the way that you're going to start is by acquiring a few plants, whether you do that through propagating your own plants or buying them in from a wholesale source as baby plants and growing them out. You have to start small. Now, you can grow quickly. You don't have to take forever to get to that grander vision, but don't let the bigness of what it can be stop you from getting started, because when you see something that's so big and that's so magnificent out there, it makes it really hard to get moving, because you're saying, I have nothing to start with. I don't even know what to do to get to that point. So what then should you do? You have to start on a smaller scale. Give yourself a chance, a realistic chance at being successful. A fourth reason that your nursery can fail, real thing here, is that you underestimate the amount of work that it takes to do this. But I'm assuming that if you are interested in starting a nursery, then you're the type of person that likes to work. You like to get your hands dirty. You're not always looking at the clock, seeing when you can get off. You're not counting down the minutes until you can get inside and get in the heat or getting the air conditioning. Nursery work is hard work, and regardless of the size of your nursery, it's a lot of work. Even in a small nursery, it can be a lot of work. You're going to spend a lot of your time potting plants. It takes a long time to pot plants. So what does that involve? It involves putting a plant in a pot. Okay, fair enough. So where are you going to get your potting soil? Is your potting soil going to be something that's labor intensive? Mine is. I have to hand mix my own potting soil. At least that's the way that I'm doing it right now. That takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of time, as much potting soil as we go through to do that. So that's something that I have to take into consideration. And what about watering? What's your plan for watering? Are you going to hand water everything? Well, if you do, that's going to take time every single day. And you can't skip a day because you don't feel like doing it today. You do that, your plants are dead tomorrow. So what's your plan for watering? Is it going to be time consuming? Is it going to be efficient? And what about maintaining the plants that you're growing? What are you going to do about weeding? You're going to take care of your plants and you're going to keep the weeds out of them and keep them nice looking and keep them healthy? Or are you going to take care of them when they've got issues with bugs and issues with whatever pest may be plaguing them? Or are you going to take time to look at your plants every day and see how they're doing? Are you willing to take time to sit down at your computer as much as you need to shop for plants from online wholesalers, find plants that are hardy in your area, and then work through the process of ordering them, having them come into your place, and then dealing with them once they get there? Are you willing to deal with the reality that growing plants and having a nursery business is an ongoing learning process, and you're going to be in constant learning and constant education mode? There's something new for you to learn virtually every day, if not every week and every month. You're always learning. Are you going to do that? Will you put in the time required to do it? Have you thought about how much time it's going to take to propagate plants? And if you're really interested in growing a nursery, it's just not going to happen overnight. You have to put in the time. You have to put in the work. You have to be committed. You can't dabble with this if you're planning on really being successful with it. Another reason your nursery stands a really good chance of failing is that your personal finances are a mess. Any venture that you start, no matter how big or how small, it has to be financed, and you need to think about that ahead of time. Listen, luck is not a good plan. And while you may not have the map figured out entirely from how you're going to get to point A to point B or to point F or to wherever you're headed, you got to have your finances in order. If you are bleeding money already personally every month, if you have no expendable income and everything is owed to everything in the world and you're living paycheck to paycheck, starting a nursery is going to be a challenge. It can still be done. Maybe you need to sell something to get your money to start it with, or maybe you need to take an extra job, or maybe you need to make sacrifices in your life, or whatever it is. Cut some things out, change the way you live, sell a car, move to a different place, whatever it is. But if your finances are not in order, your nursery is going to be a huge challenge. What if your startup costs wind up being higher than you thought they would be? And even starting small, you thought, well, for $1,000, I can get this much done. Well, what if it winds up being $1,500? What if it winds up being $2,000. Well, if you've got some money set aside to help plan for some of these contingencies and to help plan for some of these things, look, part of your plan needs to be that things are not going to go as planned, and you need financially to be prepared for that until your nursery can start sustaining itself and can start growing itself and building itself on its own. You're going to be footing the bill out of your own pocket, which is totally fine, but just have a plan for it. Look, $1 million is not falling out of the sky and landing in your lap anytime soon. You have to make it happen, and you have to plan for it. Don't fail on this area or your nursery will fail. And a sixth and final reason why your nursery is going to have a hard time making it, why it's probably going to fail, is because you're in it alone. Your family is not on board with you. When you're going at something like this alone, you're going to have enough opposition just in the difficulty of getting a nursery started. And the last thing you need is difficulty or opposition from home, from your partner, from your friends, whoever it is that make up your inner circle, your family unit. It's very difficult to do this when people are not on board with you. Could be that your family sees what you're wanting to do is they see it as a waste of money. Like, we're not throwing all that money at that just for it to fail and not work and it to be yet another thing that you're blowing money on. Okay, so let's think of it this way. Start really slow and show your family that it can work. That might take a year. It might take 2 years. Nursery is not a way to get rich quick or to quit your job next week. It takes time to grow out nice plants. And let your family see you doing that. Let them see that you took a little bitty seedling or a cutting or whatever it is, and that you grew that, or that you grew 50 of those out into nice size selling plants, that you sold them, and that you made some money. You're gonna win people over when people in your family start seeing you making money, that it's not costing a fortune, that it's not taking all of your time, especially on a really small scale. You're going to get them on your side in a hurry. And if your family's not on board, you don't have to be a jerk about it. Just kind of quietly go about doing your nursery business. You can do it in a small space, at home, on a farm, anywhere you have room. You're not really limited by your space unless, you live in some really tiny living situation, in which case you're probably not interested in these videos anyway. But what you want to do is start out slow, let your nursery start making its own money, demonstrate that it can be productive. You'll figure out if you really want to do it or not in the process. And I got a feeling that one way or another, your family's going to get on board if this is turning into something that's successful for you and by extension, successful for them. While this is certainly not an exhaustive list of reasons that your nursery could fail, it's certainly a place for you to get started and to give you some things to think about. And I really hope that it's been helpful to you guys today. So thank y'all for watching. I love y'all, and we'll see you on the next one.